What is your favorite paradox? If you ask Rick Astley for a DVD of the movie Up, he will not give it to you because he is never going to give you up. However, by not giving you up, even though you asked for it, he is letting you down. The Astley paradox. This kind of comment is why I spend so much time on Reddit. Did I just get rickrolled? In this sense, it is considered Rick tumbled. You need a job to get experience, but you can't get a job without experience. General rot on wanted ads like this is our ultimate candidate. Most likely you will be passed on. Maybe you'll have a shit interview where you almost pass out, like I did. Fuck, you might even get it. The solution? Lie on your resume and say you were self-employed/sole proprietor for a year or two. Just say you did freelance/consulting in whatever your ideal field of work is. For this to work properly, you'll need to actually know the field well enough to pass as someone with 1 to 2 years of experience, but depending on the field it shouldn't be too hard to wing it. Lying about your education while applying to fields that don't use your post-secondary education but require some post-secondary education is surprisingly effective. The interesting number paradox. The first number with no interesting properties has the interesting property of being the first number with no interesting properties. Okay, but the second number with no interesting properties is not nearly as interesting. Could this work with anything? X. Being the most average makes you interesting because no one is as average as you. There is a clear ordering of numbers, but not for humans. Well, it's only clear-cut for this purpose for natural numbers. Not sure if this is a traditional paradox, but growing up middle class in America, my parents made too much money that I didn't qualify for any major financial assistance for my college tuition, but nowhere near enough money to actually be able to afford it. I think that's a catch-22, but I could be wrong. Dude, they already said they didn't go to college, Simon now. I was so pissed that I still had to put my parents' salaries, of which I saw none of for tuition, board, or anything, in my FAFSA, and seeing I only qualified for loans, of which 20 years later I still am in ridiculous debt, hit the motherfucking max, and knowing if I knew a little about law back then I could have divorced my parents financially and been much better off. Rant over. To set up my Wi-Fi I need Wi-Fi to install an app needed to set up my Wi-Fi. After being harassed by pop-up reminders for a year I finally did a Windows update on my computer. One of the things that apparently needed updating was my Wi-Fi driver. It uninstalled the old one and then ran into an error because it could no longer connect to Wi-Fi to install the new version. Holy shit, you just brought back a memory. I was in college in the late 2000s, and I thought that I could save money by installing a pirated version of the next Windows upgrade instead of paying for my own product key or buying a new computer. At that time it was popular and easy to host programs on the dorm's central server and share them between students. Generally speaking, all you needed to do was download the CD image, and then mount it on a virtual drive, which would trick the computer into thinking you had a real CD and a real drive, that didn't really exist. Then you could treat the image as the real thing and install or play any game or movie wanted. It was the golden age of internet piracy. Unfortunately, I went to upgrade my computer to a pirated version of Windows, using a pirated image of the Windows installation CD. Worse still, is that I thought I was rather savvy, and when I had made a system restore point, instead of burning that onto CD, I could save a few cents but by saving the system restore point onto a virtual image instead. You can probably guess where this is going, but in the middle of the uninstallation process, the virtual CD drive ceased to exist, and could not exist for the low-level BIOS to access, and I could not install Windows at that point. I also could not go back using my system restore, which also required the virtual CD player. To open the blister seal package my scissors came and I need scissors to open the blister pack. Mitch Hedberg once said my belt holds up my pants and my pants have belt loops to hold my belt. What's going on down there? Who's the real hero? I spent way too long thinking about this when bored. The belt is the hero. The belt loops are the way that the pants connect to the belt, but have no bearing on supporting the pants. Essentially, you could tape your loopless pants to your belt and achieve the same effect, but if you didn't have a belt there, the pants would fall down. His hips. Hips don't lie. The Jevons paradox, which states that if anything comes around that increases the efficiency of consuming some resource, the demand for that resource will go up, leading to even more of it being consumed instead of less. I remember hearing about an aqueduct that took water to NYC a long time ago. It was very effective and allowed the city to grow. The population grew to the point where the aqueduct wasn't enough anymore. It was the victim of its own success. This is also what explains how adding more lanes to a road will not improve traffic conditions. Yep, Brass paradox. https://n.m.wiki.org/wiki/brass%27s_paradox. The ship of Theseus paradox. In light of this, it is said that the human body regenerates all the cells within it every 7 years, Are we the same person we were 7 years ago? Also hilariously illustrated in real life by the band Sugar Babes. The original members all slowly left, being replaced one at a time, until no original members were left but a band called Sugar Babes still existed. Then the original members all got together to make a new band that had a different name. Who are the real Sugar Babes and who are the new band? It happens with dungeon runs in MMOs all the time. A group of 5 will start a run but be replaced before the end. It's pretty hilarious. Greater than in light of this, it is said that the human body regenerates all the cells within it every 7 years. Are we the same person we were 7 years ago? Only certain types of cells, like skin cells, are remade constantly like that. We're not constantly shedding heart cells, for instance. You're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. She's suggesting it's not about them but the song is entirely about them. I've always interpreted it as the song isn't about them. It's about Carly's feelings and experiences when she was with them. They're not the main character, just the inciting incident. I don't know about that. The verses are entirely describing the anonymous subject in second-person perspective. It's all about what they did, horse won a race, watched themselves gavit in an apricot scarf, etc., and not directly stating how Carly felt in any way other than her voice as the author. You don't know you're beautiful, and that's what makes you beautiful, One Direction. So if they're informing her of her beauty, then she would know of her beauty, therefore making her no longer beautiful. Doctor Who and Dr. House. The fact that this has upvotes means I'm missing something here. Edit, OHH paradox aka pair of docs. This doesn't work with all accents, so the joke was lost on me, too. Para and pair of sound nothing alike with an English accent. That took me too long. Paradox Interactive. They make some damn good strategy games. The king of 4X games for sure. Love me some Stellaris. Determined Exterminator or Devouring Swarm? Bootstrap Paradox. The fact that the idea/items never have a beginning or an end but the fact that exists to exist is just cool. If you ever played Zelda Ocarina of Time, this is present with the guy in the windmill. Learned about Bootstrap Paradox at 8 years old. Greater than Bootstrap Paradox. For those who aren't familiar with the phrase, you are almost certainly familiar with the concept. It's basically the twist in most time travel movies. One event causes a second event. The second event is the cause of the first event. Think Back to the Future. Marty plays Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry, a song that existed in his timeline that he learned, did not create. He goes back to the 50s and plays it at a school dance. One of the guys in the band is a cousin to Chuck Berry. He lets Chuck Berry hear the song over the phone. Presumably, this is how Chuck Berry gets inspired to write the song in the first place. So who wrote Johnny Be Good, Marty or Chuck? Well, if Pinocchio says my nose will grow, what happens? If he truly believes it will grow and it doesn't, it isn't a lie. Remember Jerry, it's not a lie, if you believe it. This brings up a very important difference that more people should recognize. Being wrong is different than lying. Lying involves intentional deception. This goes for future events and also statements of fact. I will go to your birthday party. If I have no intention in going, that's a lie. If my mother gets into a car accident and I cannot go, then my statement just turned out to be wrong. The White House is at 2600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If I knew it was at 1600 Penn Avenue, I just lied. If I actually thought it was 2600, I was just wrong. The Epicurean Paradox. Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able, but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? I actually kind of like C.S. Lewis' response to this. He says that omnipotence means the power to do all things. Intrinsic impossibilities are not things but non-entities. Usually when I'm using this, it's against fundamentalist claims to nonsense. But hey, I've also had the thought that, well, I'm coming from a position more like Spinoza, where God literally is the totality of everything and all potentialities. In that case, all things are possible with God is true, because God literally is all things. That's the definition. I do believe Spinoza was drawing from the Jewish mystic tradition, and one theme there is, wow. Actually, now that I'm typing it, I realize that this is a totally appropriate discussion for this thread. Because the idea is that an infinite God of pure love and goodness is limited by its own lack of limitation. It is a contradiction and thus cannot exist. The way I understand this is twofold. First, a totally unified being with no experience of division is all perception with nothing to perceive, and so it reverts to virtual non-existence. The second is, no experience or concept can exist without contrast. What are love and joy without pain? If they could even be said to exist, we wouldn't notice them. It's like how cold doesn't make any sense without hot. Of course they're relative, but the point is that without any variation, we wouldn't have either. Anyway, what mystics, in the Jewish tradition, but also in others, is that we choose to live here as a part of God to experience separation and pain for the sake of all of existence. How could we choose it from a state of non-existence? Good question. I'm not sure how literally to take it. But even so, I definitely see this embedded in the subtext of stories like Adam and Eve. Another paradox here is, I think there's a risk with this kind of thinking that people will think it's right to seek out, cause, and or prolong pain, but I think pain is inevitable. Part of the idea is that existing in separation is pain. But the idea is that if pain is necessary for the existence of everything, to experience it as a form of love, even if you look at it in a more mundane way, it drives us to protect ourselves and change.